Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. This is KMMU.
Okay, folks. Well, I am attempting to get rid of the intro. So that's not working out like I wanted it to. So we'll deal with it. Folks, this is Talk with Jon here on KBJA AM 1640. I'm your host here Tuesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. You can join me, and I look forward to being with you here again today. I'm going to introduce my guest here in just a moment, but first, let me go ahead and just give out the show prayer and the show mantra. Like I said, it's as I share, this is the prayer of my heart. Now, bottom line is, do I live up to this all the time? No, I don't. I do my best to try to live up to this, but frankly, I don't all the time. Okay, so the show prayer is, I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. That's the show prayer. Then the show mantra. When I'm doing this show, I try to keep this in mind. Where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. All right, let's bring on our guest this week. As you know him, you love him. He's one of our favorites, reoccurring guest, Michael Letts. Michael, thank you for joining me. And that I know of, I don't really know how to get rid of the other screens. So we don't have my producer Dwayne this week. So it's just you and I, and we will do our best to that's not what I want. Dang it. I was hoping to do something.
Just add to the scenery, John. It'll work out just fine.
It's the scenery of Salt Lake City. Okay,
there you go.
Folks, I want to introduce my guest. Everybody knows him, loves him. Bottom line is, Michael Letts is one of the, I'm going to say he's one of the best human beings around. And Michael Letts is the the CEO, founder, and president of Invest USA. Invest USA offers bulletproof vests. Well, I'll let him define what that is. But basically, for us laymen, I want to. I'm not even going to reveal how ignorant I am. But he offers bulletproof vests to first responders and to the police and sheriffs and so forth, and first responders. So as of now, his organization has given out over 17,000 active shooter vests. That's what I was looking for. To America, and even some of Border Patrol. So bottom line is, we appreciate what he does. Folks, go to investusa.org. That's INVESTUSA.org. Go there, find out more about him and his organization and what they're doing and what they can do and what you can do. Because bottom line right now, folks, as you know, it is an insane time for police, for first responders. It is crazy. And so I've got a bunch of topics, and the majority of them right now have to do with ICE and so forth. But before we get going any further, I have started saying, Michael Letts, will you please offer a word of prayer at the beginning of every show, and let the big man know upstairs that we want, let Jesus, let the Lord know that we want this show to honor him.
I'd be happy to, John. Let's start off, if you don't mind. We'll put our hearts in meditation and prayer. Lord, we come before you. We thank you for this opportunity to discuss the matters at hand that are facing this country. We ask that the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart would be acceptable in thy sight. O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. We ask all this in the name of our Savior, Christ Jesus. Amen.
Amen. So I want to also, before we get rolling on this show, I want to do a tribute to someone very, 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 very important to me. The most important person, one of the two most important people in my entire life. Probably the most important person in my life. My mother's birthday is today. She's over 70. I won't say how old she is. She doesn't look like, she does not look as old as she is. And I'm like, she's probably the most important because she showed me how much to honor my earthly father. Now, the two most important people in my life here on earth are my parents. Why? Because they put me on the trajectory that I am. They honored Jesus Christ, the Lord of this land, the God of this land. They honored him. They taught me to honor him. I didn't always follow their teachings, but because of them, I am what I am, and I've come to know Christ as well as I know him. And without them, and without her especially, I wouldn't be who I am today. So I love you, Mom. You're the best. I've got the best mother on the face of the earth, bottom line. Then I also it also happens to be my favorite nephew. It's his birthday. And those that know my family know why he's the favorite cousin and the favorite nephew. He is a very special young man sent from God, and he's a special individual. I love him very much. How's my guy? How's my guy? That's our thing. How's my guy? So if he sees this, I love you. I love you, buddy. And so I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you don't mind me getting things off to a start that way as far as, and I'm going to tell you this, folks, how do we heal this country? How do we heal this land? Because right now we're torn up. We're getting torn up and we're becoming more torn up. I think that starts with it. No, it starts with the Lord. It starts with honoring our Savior. And then next it's honoring the family. Those are the two most important things. And I guarantee you the founders would say the same thing, that if we turn to Christ and we turn to our families, we can heal everything. And the bottom line is the Democrat Party and those who want to promote the craziness that's going on in our land. And there's plenty of Republicans too, rhinos especially, that are of the same ilk, that are willing to tear down this land. What some of them do realize, and some of them, so those that are the puppet masters, those that are the money changers, the ones that are control of this world and pull the strings. And a lot of the Antifa guys that are on the streets doing the stupid stuff and getting in trouble don't realize they're having their puppet strings pulled. And the bottom line is, those people know what they're doing at the top. But those that are being played like puppets are a bunch of yo-yos, and they just don't, they need to figure it out. So, and the whole purpose of this is to destroy the family. And there's a lot of ways to go about doing it, but they've proven that out. And I'm going to say, hey, one of the two major parties between the Democrats and Republicans have had a mobile altar of Moloch at their convention. One didn't. Kind of
Very true.
And basically goes to say where things are. Now, there's plenty of Republicans that wish they could do that, especially at the very, like I said, the puppet masters at the top of the Republican Party, but not many. Well, a good percentage of them are willing to do that. So here, let me mention a number of topics that I do want to hit. Democrats allowing and giving incentive structures for violence. These are just brief headings. In Minnesota, they've got a Muslim mayor that said, we're going to hold a parade for a MAGA type person. We'll get into that. A Muslim council or a city council is all Muslim outside of Detroit. Des Moines School Board appointed an illegal alien superintendent. We want to get to that. I want to hit Charlie Kirk again. I think this is going to be a reoccurring thing, especially with Michael Letts for probably a number of months to come. Almost every time I'm going to have him on, I'm going to say, what do we know about the Charlie Kirk murder? What don't we know? And what do we suspect? Next thing, why shouldn't we just let these states burn? And I'll get into that more. That covers a ton. And then Texas says, hey, come on in. Give us a hand to the federal government. Let's see what we all can do together. So let's just start with Democrats. The Democrats are giving and allowing these and creating incentive structures for the violence. And I'm going to go to this. This is a really good explanation of where I think the problem. I'm not going to say he is the core of the problem, but I'm going to say this really shows the problem. So an individual I believe it's Jay Jones, who is but he's the Democrat nominee for Virginia for Attorney General.
Correct.
Basically, he sent out a number of texts back in 2022 to a Republican. One of his texts, and this is not a direct quote because I don't have the direct quotes. He says, people only change when they feel pain. So in order for them to change their politics, they need to feel pain. And he was referring to, he'd like to see someone basically die and their children. And he was a delegate, sent it to another delegate who was a Republican, and that Republican delegate said, what in the world is going on? You shouldn't be saying this. This is crazy, basically. You need to stop it. That Attorney General, the person running for, and it's Jay Jones. Is that right? I hope so.
That's correct.
Jay Jones doubled down, and one of his last statements was, I'll pee on their graves. Kind of goes
You're
to
exactly
say
right.
how much he really feels. And so, well, John, why, that's just one individual that I know of as of yesterday. This had been out for a few days. You don't hear any major Democrats calling out and saying he needs to step down and should step back. I guarantee you, and I don't hear it anywhere in the mainstream media where they're saying this individual needs to step down, step back, and hit the bricks, and not run for this individual. We don't hear any. There's a few on the left that are kind of like, yeah, that's not good. He shouldn't have said it. Guarantee you, if this was someone who was a Republican saying the same type of thing, only it happened to do with Democrats, he couldn't be gotten rid of from the Republican Party fast enough. I guarantee you the Republicans would be like, no, you're done. At least definitely in that race. There is, and don't go, well, what about Trump? No, this is not what about Trump. Bottom line is, this is an individual who has issues, so to me, that's a very when you look at that one situation, it explains everything that's going on with the Democrats. So I'm going to be quiet. Michael, what are your thoughts?
Well, working our way backwards on the issue that you just raised, one of the most significant things is Jay Jones is running for Attorney General of Virginia. The Attorney General slot in every state is the key law enforcement officer in the state. He's the top dog for law enforcement in the state. Kind of ironic to have your top law enforcement officer saying to his counterparts as he's running that he needs 2 bullets, and he's got 2 Republicans picked that can receive 1 apiece. That's very strong language for a law enforcement officer, especially the top law enforcement officer in your state, to be making. And no, his excuse is, yeah, I guess I was joking too much, or made some comments that probably could be considered inappropriate. It's beyond inappropriateness. You're abusing your position. Imagine, when you're the top cop making that kind of rhetoric, imagine what it makes the constituents feel. And that is why I think it's ironic what you just said. This particular person, to win, has received contributions from most of the Democratic U.S. senators, 25,000, 50,000 and above, substantial money. That's been given to his campaign. Now, you would think the Democrats, out of principle, would say this rhetoric is unacceptable. Sorry that it happened, and consequently, we cannot support your candidacy. We want the money back that we gave your candidacy to be given back to the donors that did it. Here's the problem: they're not asking for the money back. They're not condoning his speech. They're just, saying, "Oh, you're making a bunch to do about nothing." See, that's the problem that we've encountered right now. Let's go back with our listeners as to how we got to this point. First thing that happened was, the Democrats lost power. They lost power back in November at the election when the Trump administration was elected. Now, what were the consequences of that? Well, we've been talking about it for the last 9 months, John. We've discovered they had everything from plans in Russiagate that if it didn't pan out, if they couldn't soil the reputation of the president-elect, talking about Donald Trump, they even authorized Operation Silence, which was to authorize his assassination. I mean, that's how corrupt the government had gotten. They knew that when they were in power, they couldn't keep that stuff hidden. So they became desperate to get it back, to get the power back. Well, how do you get power back? Well, simply, the person that took it from you, you try to portray them as being worse off than you are, as they're dictators, they're tyrants, etc. And you notice that initially what they began to immediately come after Trump out, he's being a dictator, he's being a tyrant. Then they took anything he proposed to try to frame it in that format. Now, what would he propose? Using the guard, restoring law and order. So how did they decide to go after that? Initially, they had protests. You stand out there, everybody stand there with a little sign. Trump is a dictator, dictators go home. No king. You remember that? They had the No King rallies. Well, America saw through that. It didn't gain traction. So they took it to the next step. They held the signs in the middle of the street so that you couldn't get to work. They blocked traffic. That didn't work too well. You just got people mad. So they took it to the next level. The next level is we're going to start vandalizing the property that we're protesting on. We're going to start harassing, just verbally, but just start harassing the law enforcement and ICE officers. That didn't work. So then they said we're going to aggressively begin to try to assault the officers. Nothing major, just maybe throw some rocks at them, something like that, but let them know we don't like them. That didn't work. So they went to the next step, which you saw over the weekend. Now there were 30 law enforcement ICE officers on the way to the detention center, Broadview, Illinois. They ambushed them. They laid in wait. They had cars parked in areas where they all quickly jumped in the cars, surrounded the convoy so they couldn't get out. Then they had a female, surprisingly, took her SUV, gunned it, and rammed the side of one of the SUVs with the passengers with the agents in it, trying to cause physical damage. When that didn't work too well, she jumped out of the SUV, pulled out an automatic weapon, and started shooting at him. So what caused what was the agent's next step? Well, they got on the radio and said, officers in distress. John, this is the first time in history that a call for officer in distress has gone unanswered. Why did it go unanswered? Well, initially, the officers, the Chicago Police Department heard the call, immediately jumped in their cars, regardless of what they were doing, giving you a ticket or whatever, didn't make any difference. They stopped everything, jumped in the vehicles, they had to provide aid. Just as they're doing that, suddenly a call comes out from their chief patrol officer. Did you stand down? The call, we are not going to assist federal officers. Twice, so there couldn't be any misunderstanding. That directive was given twice. That's the first time we've ever had an officer. An officer in distress call is the most critical call an officer can make. We don't do that to say, officer in distress, P.S. I left my coffee on the desk. Can you bring me my cup of coffee? That's not what a officer in distress call is all about. We understand the seriousness, that lives are at stake, that moments and seconds count, and you have to get there to rescue your fellow brothers and sisters. That's what they were doing. Why did those officers have to stand down? Because the policies have gotten so hateful on the left hand side now that it has reached to the point to where they cannot control their emotions anymore. They've lost all sense of rationale and reasoning, and they can't tell right and wrong. That's a scary situation to be in. That's scary not just for these officers, John. That's scary for you and me. That means
Scary.
they don't have
Yeah.
no sense of morality, no sense of decency. They just as soon as shoot you as look at you. Whoever that
It's not only they don't
situation.
have a sense of morality and decency. There's plenty of bad guys that have no sense of morality and no sense of decency. One of the whole reasons for the ability uh, to have executions for people that have committed the most heinous crimes is for those that are willing to do it. Let them know we're willing to go to the mat. You may die if you do this. If you
Correct.
do this, you may die.
And the transverse of that, John, is this: when we don't do anything about it, it encourages them to continue to escalate. And I don't know how much more escalation you can get. We're seeing to me at the top of the situation as it is right now. But let me give a little something that most of America doesn't know that transpired over the weekend. It is just beginning to get picked up a little bit by the mainstream media, very reluctantly because they don't want you to know about it. We had in D.C. over the weekend 3 incidences. And you remember, we've cleaned up the crime in D.C. But on Sunday, we had a Catholic church that was preparing for what they call Red Mass. Now, I'm not a Catholic. I didn't know what that was, but I did look it up. Red Mass is where Catholics, it's just happened recently in the last 2 years, hold a special service, which would have been today on the 7th, for the victims of the Gaza issue with Hamas on October 7th against Israel. They do 2 things. They try to raise anti-Semitism awareness, and they pray for peace. But this is what the Catholics have set up. Now, when they do these special services, they have invite vendors. I mean vendors. I'm not talking about selling T-shirts. I'm people talking about have literature, etc. About the church, that kind of stuff. To be, set up little tents in the parking lot, refreshments, that kind of thing for afterwards. Well, they had someone show up with a tent that they didn't recognize. They approached him to find out what his purpose was in being there. He got very defiant. So they called the police. Police came and asked him the same question. He got more defiant with them. So they arrested him for conduct or creating disturbance, public disturbance. And when they did that, of course, they had to take down his tent and his stuff. Where they being to take his stuff down, they found 4 incendiary devices and 4 IEDs. Now, keep that in mind, okay, because the story continues. They got another call from a Catholic church again. It was just down by the White House. It was downtown, down south. I think it was called St. Constantine's. And anyway, they got a tip off. There may be more. They found 4 incendiary devices and 4 IEDs in that Catholic church. They got another tip off. This was all 2 days ago at the fire station. We call it the Red Fire Station. If you've ever been to DC or the White House, the station that you can see across the way that pretty much services the Capitol complex. 3 IEDs and incendiary devices were located there. Now, why is that important for us to talk about? I want our listeners to understand incendiary devices and IEDs are not made to give you a headache to have a bad day. They cause massive destruction, okay? If those issues would have gone off, it would have leveled blocks, okay? Thousands, hundreds at least, possibly thousands would have died. The same situation you had in the Mormon church in Michigan. The guy ran the truck through the windows. There was an exchange of fire. Lives were lost, but I think it was 4 lives total and then a number of injuries. But what we discovered after the fact during the investigation is we discovered that his truck had 4 IUDs in there that had not gone off. Had they gone off, especially when he first arrived, it would have taken the whole edifice out, killed everybody that was in there. So what I want our listeners to understand is as this hatred continues to grow, look at how it escalates in the violence. We're not talking about a single shooting or an active shooter where you kill 5 or 10. We're talking about explosive devices to knock out hundreds at a time. John, if we don't get a control on this real quick, there's going to be massive death. We're classified as domestic terrorism attacks all around the country. You saw the stage 3 that we were able to avert Sunday. How many more are getting ready to be staged?
I don't know, but here's the problem, especially on the left, with the left doing it. I'm going to say to all my fellow conservatives, Christian, especially if you're Christian conservative, we need to not get violent. We can't right now. We cannot return like for like, kind for kind. We cannot go eye for eye, tooth for tooth. We can't do that right now. We need to do everything we can to let law enforcement handle it. But here's the problem: when you see these things happening, continue to happen on the left, you will start seeing. We will see possibly conservative, like a Christian conservative, supposedly like the guy was that burned down burned down the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Supposedly that guy was LDS. Now, you and I have talked about that. We definitely will cover that. I want to get into that more, but you will see you'll see the level of crime being willing to go up even by people with on the conservative side, and eventually you will also see conservatives going after conservatives. And the bottom line is, it's annoying to me, especially in Chicago and those leaders of the big cities. It's like, well, you guys never care about the blacks or Hispanics going after one another. No, we have. We always have. We've tried to help, but you guys say you don't want us or don't want our help, and you're proving it. And then when you go after, and then when ICE comes in to take out, they're saying, well, you're putting children in handcuffs, you're putting women in handcuffs. Well, define children. Are we talking about 16-year-olds? Are we talking about 14-year-olds? We're talking about 12-year-olds who are gang members who are helping to pimp out the underage children. I mean, yes, a 12-year-old boy is a child, but also many of them happen to be. There are gang members that are 12-year-olds that have done pretty darn bad things. At 14 and 16, they happen to have done pretty bad things. Yes, they're going to get in cuffs. That we're going to put the zip ties to,
right,
zip tie handcuffs on them. You bet you we're going to do that. And sometimes even little ones, you need to, it's hard to tell someone that's 12 from someone that's 10 sometimes even someone that's 8. So the bottom line is these things happen to you. Sometimes you have to do that to find out. What they're not mentioning is we're going into this place where these we are going after the worst of the worst. The Chicago mayor say, well, and the governor is saying, well, you told us you're going to go after the worst of the worst, but you're going after these children. The bottom line is, yes, we are going after them, but sometimes we have to cuff them. Have you heard of Stockholm syndrome?
I mean, yeah, very often.
I mean, you and I have. So what is Stockholm syndrome? In a nutshell, correct me if I'm wrong, but that many times when someone is kidnapped and held by someone for an extended period of time, and it can be many hours to definitely it starts sitting in after weeks and months, which many of these sexually exploited children have had happen, and sexually exploited women have happened. You start empathizing with your captors, because some of those captors treat you much nicer than, hey, the really bad guy that was really bad to me. So bottom line is, yes, sometimes we have to do that at the very beginning to get these things. So that's kind of where I wanted to get a start at. I wanted to, so kind of to go overall big picture. we've got big concerns. Like I said, bottom line is we're going to see, I don't want to see blood in the streets. I've mentioned this before. I've had a son that had a deflated lung. It was not due to anything bad other than the fact that he grew really fast and he's quite tall. So he had his lungs collapsed on its own, and I'm not going to get into the whole medical explanation. I had another son who fell from a significant height, broke his back in a couple of spots, broke both arms, and one of his arms he broke at the wrist. He had, both of the bones were broken, and there was actually the doctor considered it 3 breaks just between here and here in his wrist. So in one fall, he had like 8 broken bones, is what the doctor wound up calling it. I watched as they retracted his arm, and it took, fortunately he was out, but it took three full-grown men to be able to pull his arm hard enough that it would get the bone back in and set the bone somewhat back in place.
Right.
And folks, my son was completely out. He sat up, opened his eyes, and went, "Ow!" I was so proud of him. And then he went back down.
Oh yeah, he regardless of how much he was out, he felt that one.
Yeah. So, no, he felt it. So, the bottom line is, folks, I don't want our country to go nuts, because if it goes nuts, you're not going to the hospital. People are going to die over really dumb, simple things. Used to be people, hey, you got an infection. If you got a bad infection in your leg, you might die over the infection, something that is easily taken care of in a doctor's office today. If we have enough chaos, that will go all the way. And so I talked to a friend of mine who goes to Africa multiple times a year, happens to be a doctor. And I asked him about, and he does humanitarian work. And I said, so what happens? I said, so what happens if like someone's in Africa, someone born and raised in Africa, what happens to them? And he goes, there's people walking around in Africa with 1 lung. There's no one walking around with none.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, in Africa, that could be a death sentence.
Right.
And he goes, and he goes, I said, so my other son that fell from a great distance, he goes, that guy might be crippled the rest of his life.
More than likely would be. They don't set things back then and just let it heal on its own. And the body does the best it can. Sometimes it can pull through. Sometimes it can't. But sometimes when it pulls through, the damage does never healed because it doesn't set itself to be healed.
Well, one of the things is we found out that a chip of bone had flipped over during the break. And so when they went in to do surgery on it, they were like, this just looks weird. We're going to do surgery, make sure it's right. And they had to flip it back.
It's not going to happen on its own.
That's not going to happen on its own. That's not going to heal properly. And, what happened? And both of my sons have broken, I think, the small radius. I think it's the bigger bone. So they would have been kinked. So like the son that fell had to have 2 millimeters removed out of his arm. And the other one, we had to break his arm. Both of them, their arms are about an inch shorter than the other one. So, I mean, medical, with what we have going on in our world, it gets crazy. We're not going to have this. And the United States and if the United States falls and goes nuts, the rest of the world will too. Guaranteed, the rest of the world. There is no other United States. There is no other place that is the beacon of light on the hill. When the U.S. goes, we're toast.
And that is their goal and objective. Remember, they want to do everything they can to destroy this country, and that is a perfect venue for them to do so. And that's why they're working as hard as they can to get that job done. And they've come awfully close. And that's one of the reasons why I say it's so important that we as Christians be vigilant. It's not, as you said, it's not that we're looking to be combative, but we have to be visual and we have to stand firm. You know what I've found so oftentimes, John, is that when you stand firm for truth, the devil seems to try to leave and find an easier target. And I know that sounds like I'm using the word devil for all these uh, protesters, but some of them actually are. But the principle is the same.
I am okay. So I'm gonna lose some. I'm gonna lose some followers over this one probably. I believe that many of the people in the Democrat Party now, John, what does many people mean? Several 100,000 are demonically possessed. At least several 100,000. I'm going to go one step further. Many of the people that are transgender or that are trying to get supporting their children to be transgendered, and I think it's Munchausen by proxy, I think is the term.
Right.
Where you have a child that has a malady, and people will be, oh, like, you poor person because your child has, this happened. There was a case where I think some lady said her daughter had cancer. She was literally making her daughter sick, and she was doing it because it happens all the time. And I think it's very much on the left. And I think a number of those parents that are like, totally, you go in, you be transgendered. Many of those that are willing to do that, I believe, are on a low level demonic possession, if not a high level.
Correct. I would agree. I mean, Satan's very real, and he can do two things: he can possess, or he can obsess. Obsess is where he just plants thoughts in your mind and just drives you crazy, for lack of a better word. Obsess is where he actually takes a residency inside your body, inside your soul, and makes sure it's not just the devil himself. He has plenty of demons, okay, that do these jobs. And
Yeah.
they make sure they control your mind process. Instead of suggesting, they actually control it so you actually do what's being suggested. Those are the really extreme cases.
Now, maybe I'm a little crazy on this one, but if I remember in Genesis, not only Satan was kicked out, but how much of the host of heaven was kicked out?
Third of the angels.
And they were sent down. My understanding is pretty much they were sent down here to the earth.
Yes, and here's what we think, because the scripture is not clear. But people have often asked me the question: is what's the difference between hell and the lake of fire? The lake of fire is the ultimate holding plot for eternity for those who have rejected Christ. Hell is kind of like a temporary holding cell until we get to the point where the lake of fire is put in place. Many people think that hell is actually in the center of the earth. I've never been to the center of the earth. I couldn't tell you. What I can tell you is we do have an awful lot of scientific information. The center of Earth appears to be very warm, liquid, liquid fire, molten, etc. So it wouldn't surprise me. But you have to look at this. When God created the heavens and the earth.
I want to jump in here real quickly.
Sure.
So when one of the spirits were cast out by Christ, what was the spirit called? Legion.
Correct.
Now, my understanding of what that really meant was not just there was one spirit, there was a legion of spirits.
Legion is thousands. The Roman legions. The Roman legions is what they used to describe their army. And trust me, there wasn't one man with a sword, a shield, and a spear. When the Roman legions came into your country, you knew you were facing some tough days ahead, because there were thousands upon thousands and thousands of Roman soldiers called legionnaires, and that's where the term came from. And so you took when God created heaven, and He created the angels. The angels He created, but He gave them the ability for free will, and of course The difference between humans and angels is God gave them the ability for free will, but once they made that decision, they were sealed on that decision. If they made it with the right decision for righteousness or good, they can never do bad. If they chose wickedness and evil, they can never have a redemption of being good. Mankind has the ability to be redeemed through the gift that Christ gives us with His death on the cross. So now we're talking about doing church. We're talking about a preaching sermon here, John. But what I would say is, I would remind people of this. I can imagine the way the universe is so incredible when you take a look at all the stars and the complexity of the earth, et cetera, et cetera. God doesn't do things on a small level. He does things on a grand level. So I'd imagine when He created legions of angels to host and to take care of heaven, we're not talking about a couple hundred. We're talking about probably millions. And when you consider a third of those churned and became demons, but from their own free choice, that's a lot of people, a lot of demons that can do a lot of damage down roaming on the earth. That's for sure.
Well, let's. So I think we've kind of got a big picture on what's happening, and whoever was responsible for Charlie Kirk's death, and I think there may even be some conservatives that were so-called conservatives that may have been responsible for
I think we need to talk about that for just a second, John. And here's what I want your listeners to know. I want you to understand the complexity of what we're dealing with.
Let's dive down into the Charlie Kirk assassination. What we know, what we think we know. Sorry, there's a fly flying around. We have fly swatter in here.
Well, at least he's interested in what's being said. Let him be.
And so I here's here's what I put down for Charlie Kirk. What do we know? What do we think we know? And what do we suspect? And so I'm going to start off here. We're quite confident Charlie Kirk is dead. We're quite confident that he was shot. And
Correct.
From there, like Phil Lyman said, there's a lot of questions. So there are three right now. There seems to be so one of the ones that I keep on getting hit up about is the guy just to Charlie Kirk's left up in the front, right by the gate, supposedly that took a palm gun and shot him from the front. So it would have been from his front left, down front left. And so I'd like to know your thoughts on that. And when I first heard about it and saw it, I was like, there's no way. Then supposedly it's the same guy that when he went over to the body, he did this with his glasses. People are implying that those are, special glasses that, so possibly can be like an aiming device or something like that. So there's that. There's the story, the official story of Tyler Robinson taking a shot off the roof. There's also a story that's off to his right. There might have been a rifle shot off to his right. And I forget, I want to say his name is, I can't remember. I'm not even going to try, but there's a gentleman that recently has done an analysis where he talks about the chest, when a bullet, a rifle, high-powered rifle shot, 30-06 goes into that gel, it all of a sudden goes whoop, and then comes back. Does it in a couple of milliseconds. And he goes, you see his chest expand like that and then come back. And so he's claiming that he thinks that that's what happened. And so we believe that Charlie Kirk was killed. The official story was from Tyler Robinson. There's the shot that was taken down front, palm, and I keep on having a number of people ask me about that. So I'm sure you've seen it. I want to know what your thoughts are, and then what do we suspect? So what would you say we know about the Charlie Kirk assassination?
Well, let's work our way backwards on this one. So we'll talk about, what they're telling you is fact, and what they're telling you is conjecture. They're telling you, I'm talking about the authorities, even the Bureau, that it is fact that, Mr. Robinson shot him from the rooftop. And just one of those things. He didn't like him. He shot him. End of story. There's nothing else here. There's no there there. In other words, that's the end of it. Now let's take a look. That's what they say is fact. But let's take a look at where their facts fall apart. We have no weapon that matches the ballistics that we recovered. We have no bullet that was used that we can use to show that the gun and the ballistics match. That's highly unusual. We have no recorded video. See, we do have a video of him being on the roof, but when you look at the timelines, he runs to the back to jump off the runway. There's no rifle in his possession, so we're led to believe that somehow it got broke down. I told you I own one of those. The ability to break one of those down. First of all, you got to be a pro to break it down. Second of all, it's very difficult to break down a Mauser K98. So you just can't just do that in a matter of seconds. If you're going to do this and have any semblance of trying to escape, now if you want to just shoot and then stand up there and wave and say, "Hey, I did it, come get me," that's a different story. But if you want to have any anonymity about what you've done, trust me, you're going to get a sniper rifle that you can break down in 3 seconds. Boom, put it back together in 3 seconds if you need to. You have some ability to move and get out after the situation has occurred, which didn't occur here. You have so many that begin to analyze the shot itself, trajectory, wind drift, etc. You got to be a pro, a really good pro, to hit that shot. Okay. So now, if you're talking about a pro did it, I hate to tell you, but Mr. Robinson certainly is not a pro. Okay. So now you have opened up the Pandora. Who did? Was that the shot? Were there others? Were there other agencies? Well, you remember the MO is happening at JFK when you had intelligence agencies, governmental agencies that were involved in the assassination. What happened and what is still happening? The government covers up, comes in, hides, covers up so that you don't ever find out what involvement the government had, or participation or knowledge of what occurred. We're getting the same MO here. We're not getting any facts. We're not getting anything else that's been done or this has been what now? How many weeks, John? 3 or 4 weeks at least?
We are we're past 4 weeks. We're coming in on 5 weeks as of tomorrow. I think it's 5 weeks.
You would have had ample time had it been a non-professional to have answered all these questions. And the fact that nothing's now being said is kind of going into what we call that dark hole, that dark period. Nobody wants to comment. Will lead you to the question, and I've raised this on national news quite a few times. Look, instead of telling people that they're crazy or conspiracists for asking questions, why don't we encourage every question to be asked and give an honest, transparent answer to every question? That way nobody has any cause to suspect you're trying to hide anything. It's when you dismiss the questions, you begin to ignore the questions. Now we got this covered, there's nothing to see here. Let's move on to the next thing. That it raises suspicion and concern, as it should. And so there's so much that has been raised with this that now you get to the issue, okay, if the first theory that they were given to us is not accurate, that it was just a young punk, Tyler Robinson, taking a lucky shot, had it with his eyes closed, just happened to, hit, and this is the way it is. If we're beginning to see there's so many holes factually as to how that occurred, then what really did happen? Do you have other people that were positioned? And then you begin to study the videos, study the cameras. You have a lot of questions that come up. You have questions on his security detail. And when you raise those questions, initially, because I've dealt with foreign intelligence agencies before, let's leave it at that. I know what the players are. And when you begin to say, that's not an American player, that person has ties to foreign agencies, and everybody gets their panties in a wad. And suddenly it's kind of like they're quickly scrambling. No, that can't be, that can't be. No, the fact of the matter is, it's true. I reckon that's who they are. So what are they doing there? Why were they, quote unquote, hired to be his security? They weren't his security for the last 10 years. They were hired for this one event. What happened to the the normal security detail that he would have? You just you begin to see how more and more questions come up. And quite frankly, here's the problem, John. The government is taking a position. There's nothing there. Remember the same MO they did with JFK. We're closing it down. Investigation's over. What's the next thing we want to talk about? But when that happens, it causes more and more people to do more and more research. More and more questions come up. You go from a theory: was there more than one shot? Who were the people surrounding him? Why was the this is a crime? Let me tell you what the crime I'm referring to. You can't go into a crime scene on your own and begin to tear it apart. This is law enforcement 101. You understand? Even if you have a badge, even if you're a cop, okay, and you go into a homicide scene and you start moving stuff around, taking stuff down, guess who's going to jail? You, for disturbing a crime scene. Why come in this situation just what minutes, less than minutes after he had been shot, picked up, and moved rushed to the hospital? You've got staff, you've got security detail going around taking down cameras, packing up stuff. Why? And why was that not pursued? I mean, if it had been a normal death, when I say normal, I'm talking about a normal homicide. If it had been a normal homicide, and I'd have gone in and done that and started taking down cameras and start picking up stuff, I'd be talking to you from a cell jail right now. And so, how come those procedures didn't follow suit? Of course, then it's interesting. Every time you raise a question, people can see through their answer. Oh, well, we authorized them to do that because we knew they were part of the security. We knew that they would know what to do. You can't authorize anything. Only the coroner can touch a homicide scene. So wrong. You tried to cover up with an answer that doesn't make sense. What's the next thing you're telling me? There's no coroner's report, medical examiner. There's the doctor that signed the death. And I'm not saying the doctor couldn't tell, hey, he's dead. I'll sign that he's dead. But that's not the way the system works. And why is it there are so many exceptions that were done in this particular case? You, of all people, should know when you have high profile people, you better get it right and you better get it transparent because everybody's going to have a thought and opinion as to what occurred. And when you're not concerned about it, it leads people to begin to wonder, John.
So my guest that's going to be on next week, Joel Skousen, called the in the state of Utah. My understanding is whenever there's a homicide, there is one central place. It's not the coroner's office. It's I forget
the medical examiner, probably.
Medical examiner, I believe it is.
Every state has a different name for it.
And so he called the medical examiner's office, and they're not taking any phone calls. And one of the messages is, if you are calling about a recent, about a death, leave a message and we'll get back to, basically leave a message and we'll get back to you. If you're calling about a recent death, leave a message and we'll get back to you. So that's the same number to get a hold of people, right?
Right.
So he called and I believe he called and stated two things. One, did they have a chance to review the body, and was there basically a coroner's report? Was it done? And he has not gotten a return phone call. I believe he's called twice. And he's like, he stated, I don't want to know what the results are. I just want to know if it was done. And he has yet to get a call back. So it's not like they could say, well, because of the family, we don't want to release any information about the report. No, all he wants to know is, was one done? And there's yet to be a phone call put out. So
there has been a response to that because I'm familiar with it. And the response has been, we had the doctor in the ER handle what needed to be handled. Sign off. Okay, let me just take you at face value. That's still against the law. The law specifically says the coroner or the medical examiner, whatever word you say here, is the only one with the authority to do so. So if I assume that you're telling me the truth, that, well, the doctor did it, who authorized him to do that? There's only one person that could do that, and even then he can't delegate his power. He would have had to have said, you can join me, and as we take a look at this, you can sign as a witness if you'd like, but it has to have his signature on there. Why are we making an exception here?
I don't know.
And it would be one thing. Here's where as we're talking about the situation, if we had that's the only issue, John, I could then kind of take and say, well, you got 9.9 out of 10. I'm not so sure. But there are out of 10 issues here, there's 9.9 that don't make sense. That's the problem, is the ones that do make sense are so few, and the other is so off the charts, off the wall, that of course it's going to lead to questions. And then when people get upset, well, we're not going to answer that, or they give you an answer that's just kind of like out of a comic book. It really just digs a hole even deeper, John.
Okay, so I want to get to where you think that shot came from, and what you. So I want to know your opinion of the least likely spots where that might have happened. So there is the guy that is to Charlie Kirk's front left, lower left at
Sure.
about, I would say, was probably almost at a 45 degree, somewhere between a 20 and 45 degree angle. A guy that was in a grayish dark tan shirt. He brings his right arm,
Dark sunglasses.
yeah, and dark sunglasses, black sunglasses, brings his arm up to his bicep, and then right here, let's see where the camera would have been like a possibility of a barrel, and it's what people are saying it's a palm pistol. What are your
Correct.
thoughts on that being the possible? Because it looks like he does happen to move in correlation to about when a gun within microseconds of when a
Yes.
shot would have been taken. What is the likelihood you think that was one of the shots taken?
I think there's a high likelihood. You say, well, why would you say that? Let's go back to what our MOs
Okay, so
been.
what did you say? What
I
was
said it's a very high likely probability that occurred.
okay?
And you say, why would you say that? Well, let's go back to our MOs. What has occurred in the past on when you're talking professional jobs? Which I think if you're still under the guise that it was a kid that got mad, you said something, he just popped one at you. I don't think your brain's functioning too well. I think everybody could see this obviously was a professional, organized, well done hit. We'll call it what it is. It was a hit. And so, if that's the case, we saw this on the clips, and I know I don't remember whether I showed you the tape or whether I was supposed to get you the tape. We released a bunch of stuff with JFK. One of the things that was released that the media never said a word about, one of the tapes clearly shows the driver of the JFK car, who, when you do the background, you discover he was assigned to the Secret Service for that day. He wasn't a Secret Service agent, he was a CIA operative. He was assigned to drive for that day the motorcade. Now, how many times would you suddenly, with no experience, be assigned to drive the president of the United States?
I would
And we
think
could
that's a one of one scenario.
and we could see in the video very clearly, same situation. Something he's driving with his hand. He has with his right hand. I'm making sure I've got right and no left hand. He has it up under his right armpit. The shot rings out. The head goes. The throat shot hits. He grabs his throat, leans forward. Then suddenly you can see the driver very quickly turn. You could see the smoke. And you can see the explosion coming out from underneath his armpit. Shot is taken. Contact car. You can see him throw it down the seat next to him, and they rush off to the hospital. Um, so don't tell me that those shots can't be made. I've had people tell me you can't make a shot like that. Trust me, assassins can make those kind of shots and do it with relatively ease. So that could be it. There's also the question. Electronic devices. You remember what happened with I think it was with Palestinian Authority
Yeah,
or Hamas.
Hamas and the pagers.
Yeah,
But
and the
those were
pagers and the
bigger.
cell phones.
Yes.
They were bigger, but you remember those were massive explosions. In other words, they never showed it in that video. But when that happened, it didn't. Oh, I do a little stick in my finger. I got a prick in my finger. No, there was substantial damage done. They can't have devices that just fire or blow one projectile, and you would have gotten the same result from a neck hit that occurred here. So that can be done. There are a number of different things that can be done. But you say, well, give me the exactly what happened. Let's go. Let's just step back for a second before we do that. If we're thinking there are more players involved, I'll tell you a little secret about law enforcement. Follow the money. Follow, they always say, well, who had an interest? Yeah, that's important. But more important is follow the money. And there were a lot of things that were said, a lot of things that were done where money was threatened to be withheld by supporters and all because he had changed his position on support for various countries. And that having the case, follow the money. We know for a fact that Mr. Tyler Robinson received over $50,000 in contributions from the Democrats for Communists, DAC, socialist movement within the Democratic Party that promotes communism. Why would they send him over $50,000 a week before the assassination? I mean, who was he? Was he like a state senator? I mean, he was a part of the member of the party. No, he was nothing. Why would they send him and send his lover? I guess is what we're calling it now, friend or whatever it was we were calling he was living with. Sent him $20,000.
Furry boyfriend, his furry transgendering boyfriend.
He got 20. Explain to me why they would get him. And here's my question. Wow. Okay. So what kind of investigations are we doing following that money? Everything's been shut down. It's cold as ice at the moment. It's we already figured this one out. He did it. We're just going to figure out how long he needs to serve, and let's move on. Now, why? Why are we not tracking that money? See, this is the question the point I was raising. There are so many questions that have come up. You say, "Oh, that's conspiracy. That's stupid." Great. Show me that it's stupid. Show me that no, you read the wrong line. That money never went over there. It went to a Tyler Robinson, but a Tyler Robinson in China. Show me some facts. Don't make them up, by the way. Don't try to produce something after the. Show me some facts that answer some of these questions. And when you refuse to do so, it's none of your business. We've already determined what this case is and what the outcome, and how it happened. We're moving on. Don't be mad at people when they're upset when they don't accept the answer to that question. Americans want to know the truth.
So another thing a couple things that I find curious when it comes to the Tyler Robinson being part of this, and also the trans community. There were a number of people within the trans community that the day before said that Charlie Kirk was going to be taken out. There's a number of people in the audience there's one guy that turns towards the camera celebrating that he was shot. And then, Phil Lyman shows the picture of the two gals that were right. He talked about the two gals that he came up on that were not scared, not worried. And I guarantee you, a couple liberal gals, a shooting happens in general, they're going to be one of the ones that are the most scared, but they're like, F you to all those people down there supporting them. And then the day of, it was "See, We Told You" by this, and it was part of the trans community. I'm going, I could, bottom line is, could someone have put something in that group, told them what was going on, and then they're just used as the, smoke and mirrors? Or go ahead.
Well, here's what we know, and we're not just going to talk about the Kirk case right now. This applies to all the cases that you're seeing happen. We know that there is a financial network, Soros being one of them that's helping fund it, but not just Soros. There are plenty of other foreign governments that are supporting it. We know that they're trying to create insurrection and destroy America from within. We know that they are fanning the fires of hatred towards America. Transgenders are a target for them. Why? And I'm just going to call it like it is. Transgenders are just, they're confused. I mean, they don't even know if they're a boy or a girl, and they've got great hatred. So they're great targets, are great soldiers, shall we say, to accomplish an end, to accomplish a mission or a means or our bodies to do that. We know that they're partnering now with the Islamic jihadists. That's being a nice term. Let's just call it so everybody sees it. With Muslims. Why? Muslims very clearly in the Quran say either you believe what they believe or you're an infidel that should be taken out. Now, we have heard repeatedly on social media and others, they've become more vocal now. They've taken over Dearborn, Michigan, other cities, where if you're a Christian and or anything but a Muslim, you're not welcome. They don't want you there. They
And
want to take over the country and create Sharia law all across America. That's their goal. So that's a whole nother section where these terrorists, for lack of a better word, have the ability to recruit and bring people in to do their nefarious acts. And I just use two. There's plenty of others. Our educational, higher education. How many of these supposedly prestigious colleges have their professors that are teaching our young people America sucks? You need to do something about it. We need to destroy this country. It needs to be knocked down a bit. So you've got groups that are
rise up and
being,
do something about. They're
yeah,
part of that. I'm going to say they're part of the incentive structure that causes the terrorism. They're
they're
feeding.
exactly. See, the
They're
point we're making
feeding.
is, yeah, there are so many little groups here who hate and are being taught to hate our country that it's not hard to find people to cover for the real people who are doing the job. Okay, and every professional, intelligence agency, professional assassination, etc., will tell you you don't go in and just knock them off and then vanish because that just creates more questions. So they always have a patsy, a group, somebody that you say, yeah, well, those people didn't like them anyway, who you will think had cause to do it. They can shift the attention over and be done with it, and and nothing ever come out. That is the MO, and this food carries exactly the same MO as so many others. Let me throw out one little quick thing that causes them all to get upset when I mention it. Unbeknownst to or untold by the government, to the media and to the masses, is there were drones in the air, and evidently
There were. There
there
were.
were there were drones in the air. We've got it on video. This is not hearsay. We got it on video. So now the question becomes: we already know the answers. I'm just pointing them out for people. Who owned the drones? And now let me ask you this: drones in the air. This is before the incident, the fatality. Why did the drone notify if it's a good drone? Shoot her on the roof. Shoot her on the roof. I mean, what? Tell me the purpose behind the drones being there, and what did they communicate, and why did it not effectively stop an assassination if they were drones that were trying to protect uh, the speaker, the the students, et cetera, et cetera. They were what I call good drones. And why didn't they do their job?
Well, I'll say this. The my understanding is there is the camera that shows him running off the roof also shows is the same camera that could show him going over to his position. And there are other cameras that showed the position that he would have been in. How come we've never seen those?
All that, very, very viable. And like I said, I raised the question, and because we know the answer, but we're not revealing it at the moment. Whose drone was it? And I
I
want you to know.
I don't have any idea. I didn't even know that there was a drone. So therefore, okay. So let's
Pictures are there.
it's almost 5:20. Let's synopsize this real quick. Take 1 minute. What would you say that we know, what we don't know, and maybe more importantly, what do you suspect, Michael? What do you suspect?
Well, let's go through that real quick. The questions that you just asked. What do we know? We know that the story they're on there given to you and me just makes absolutely no sense. It wasn't some random act, by some crazy kid. Okay. It obviously has all the markings and there's all the evidence that this was a professional hit. Professional hit means that it was cost money. There had to be key big parties. You don't get to pull off a professional hit unless you've got some major inside resources, etc. Who were those resources? How did they do it? Was it one shot, two shots? Was it two people? Was it five people? All that we're getting to the bottom of. It gets to the final question. So we're going to have an answer. Do you have an answer for JFK? Do you have an answer for the shot that was shot by President Trump back at Butler?
Not
Full
right
answer.
now. Not a
Do you have
solid
an answer for MLK, RFK? If it falls into the category I just talked about, being a professional hit, and if it is in the government, and when I use the word government, I'm not necessarily just saying the U.S. government, I'm talking about governments. If it falls in their best interest for this to remain concealed and hidden, uh, we haven't been able to get it out of anything else just yet. Now, have we? What makes you think this is going to be any different?
Okay, so what do you suspect?
I suspect that this is what has happened, what has been happening for generations. This was you have two good forces, good versus evil, and they are we call one the deep state, we call the other, patriots. But anyway, I believe it was the deep state. It could have been some patriots who are just, as you said, rhinos, or people who act like they're supportive of us. You are getting too close. You say real quickly, what do you think is too close talking with Charlie? Obviously, after it all happened, we had a much bigger influence on young people than we ever imagined. What was that influence? That influence was towards good, was trying to tell people, hey, look at the crazy stuff that's going on. We've got to change that. You're trying to get power back, John, and you're having to fight against that as well as all the other stuff you're fighting against. It's not a good recipe. So you got to take some people out. So do I suspect that's what occurred? Yeah. The question becomes, if you can't drain the swamp, don't have transparency, will it happen again? No question. That's why this administration, that's why this country has to say, we're tired and enough of your dishonesty, enough of you thinking that you can lead us around with a ring through the nose. We're going to stand for what the Constitution guarantees us. That's equal justice for all. That's not our government hiding things behind our back and trying to control us. It's transparency. We're not going to rest until we get it.
Okay, so this was mentioned. Someone sent me a clip showing Alex Jones making this statement that Donald Trump, within days after the shooting, said, "What's going on with this transgendered, the whole transgender thing? I want you to look into it, the FBI." And the FBI has not come out and said a thing about it, or that he knows of done anything about it. Would you, from your, one of the two of us on this screen happens to have some inside sources to the White House, and it's not this guy. Have you heard that same story?
Yes, but you have to put it in context of the way it was given. It's not just the transgenders. It's everything. Look, we talked about Russiagate, the Obama administration, sitting president authorized the assassination of a president-elect, et cetera, et cetera. They sold out our country. The director of the CIA at the time, John Brennan, utilizing national security, putting our national security at risk for their own nefarious ideas and what they were pushing. And the question becomes, okay, now that we got that out there so that America knows it, what's been done about it? Where are the files to show? I know they exist. I'm not talking to you that I'm just out of the top of my head saying I hope this is out there. I know those files exist. How come the rest of America doesn't know that? How come you haven't seen? If the files exist, are we a two-tier justice system? That means you can get away with it because of who you are, John, but I can't. Why are there not indictments? And we keep hearing the rhetoric. Oh, they're coming, boy. We're gonna tear you up, John. We get hold of you. Well, here's what happens. I keep telling you I'm gonna tear you up, John, and then suddenly I said, "Oops! I found out the statute of limitations just ran out yesterday, John. I would have torn you up, but I can't do it now." And that seems to be a continual thing that we see. And America's tired of telling me what everybody did was wrong, but not holding them accountable. And then finding out some way either we just don't talk about it anymore, or if we finally get pressed against the wall, it's, the statute of limitations ran out. I didn't realize that. I can't do anything about it. Or, well, we're still working on that, but it's confidential and I can't comment any further. End of the day,
I
I
can't
mean,
comment
after
on ongoing investigations.
exactly. And how long has it been since JFK was killed? What was that, 63? It's been at least 60 years, if not more. People finally, most of the people that want to know about it are finally dead by now. That's their MO. Just drag it out long enough to where it gets forgotten. And I thought we were going to make sure that didn't happen. I'm not saying we're not going to make sure that doesn't happen, but John, we got a tiger, a bigger tiger by the tail. It is just tough because you don't know who to trust.
All right, so let's get to some more good news.
There's plenty of it out there.
Okay, so you've mentioned a number. You've touched upon a number of the things that I want to cover. So another incentive structure is Gavin Newsom recently was on one of these late night shows and said we're going to form a Western alliance. Well, the Civil War movie that the Obamas put like 300, I think it was like a $300 million budget or something like that, not billion, multi-hundred I believe it was a multi-$100 million budget
It was multi-billion.
Budget that they created the Civil War film where at the end
Oh, I thought you were talking about the operation itself. No,
no
you're right.
no I'm
The
talking
film
about
is
the movie.
different.
So
Yeah,
in the
that was
movie
million.
they've got white guys that are going, and you've got one guy that's a white, some sort of
White
militia.
supremacist. Yeah.
He's some sort of white militia guy. He's asking an Asian looking fellow. He goes, now I want you to speak clearly and I want you to tell me where you're from so I can understand. And he's got the AK-15 or AK-15 or
47.
whatever it was pointed at him, and he goes, I'm from Hong Kong. Oh, from China, and then shoots him. Next cut basically is somebody in a truck coming and run him over. Out comes somebody that isn't white, right? And at the end of the movie, they shoot a presidential figure, basically Trump. He's got, in fact, has a red tie on like Trump does. And so, and the group that kind of breaks off is called the Western Alliance. I believe it was Colbert that was on the Colbert show, and the Colbert was like, well, what are we going to do? And he goes, we're going to form the Western Alliance. And all of a sudden you heard in the background a bunch of people start cheering. They knew exactly what he was saying. Okay, so let's move forward. What is going on? There's some craziness that's happening here in the United States. In a Minnesota town, they have a Muslim. So there was a white citizen that came to the city council and said, hey, we've got some problems here and I'm really worried about it. What are you guys going to do about it? And the mayor says, basically said, I'm going to do nothing, but I am going to throw a parade for when you finally decide to move out. The day after you move out, I'm going to throw a parade that you moved out, forcing you to move out. And he was talking about Sharia law in Dearborn. The mayor is Adahala Hamad Khaled. And he's concerned about the Islam and he called him an Islamophobe. The person that was saying, hey, I've got concerns. We've got this happening right here in the United States. What's going on, Michael, and what can be done about that?
It's going on a lot more than what we realize. And here's why. Let's talk real quickly as to why it's going on.
That city, but there's also another city just outside of Detroit that has an all-Muslim council.
And you're seeing more of it. And you're seeing now the looks to be will be the mayor-elect of New York City. Not only is a Muslim, but he's a communist. There's no question his philosophy is communism. And why would he support communism over freedom? Because here's the thing about the Quran and Muslim doctrine. It's about control. It's not about freedom. It's about control. We tell you what to do. Women, You wear a little, a scarf, whatever it is we tell you to do. You don't, you're dead. Very simple. I mean, men, I
I don't
mean,
know if I agree about them wearing a scarf, but
well, it's not a scarf. I was trying to be nice, but it's all about control. I know in Afghanistan, with the Taliban and in Iraq, etc. It was to the point where, they ran those villages with an iron fist. Women do not get education. That means girls do not get education. That means if we come in, your 5-year-old is sitting there with a book trying to learn how to read, uh, kill the parents because they allowed it to happen, and do something to brainwash that child and make sure she understands she's a female. She's not allowed to read. She's not allowed to have an education. That is what it's all about for them. That's what Cherie gives them the
and
ability
let
to
me
do.
be clear. Even though I was being a little tongue in cheek, um, the last thing I want is my daughters to not be able to read.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. But here's what we're
I
seeing.
want my daughters educated, not just my sons. I want my daughters educated.
But there, because of that belief, they hate America's values because we are a Christian nation. And so they are ripe for being part of this whole movement to try to undercut and create an insurrection and overthrow our government. But we don't talk about that. Why don't we talk about that? Because they laid the groundwork through the media ahead of time. If you have anything to say negative about Muslims, you're an Islamic phobic. Worse than that, I mean, you're scum. I mean, So, and most of our American citizens and
Xenophobe.
politicians,
You're a xenophobe.
yeah, xenophobe, and they bought into it. I can't imagine why they would allow somebody to push them around, but they did, and so they became very concerned about making sure that they didn't seem to be anti-Islamic. What did the deep state saw? Great opportunity. Now I've got a group of people that can't stand the values of America, who are protected by the media. If you dare say anything against them, doesn't make any difference if you're talking about we don't believe you should kill your kids. Doesn't make any difference what you say. You're automatically you'll see their comeback. We're Islam. We're Islamic, and you're the only reason you're saying that is because
Oh,
you
you're
don't believe in our
Islamophobic.
faith.
We would never kill any of our children. That is
Exactly.
that's a lie.
And so they censored our speech in doing that, John. And let me tell you how it applies practically for our listeners to be able to understand this. That's what you saw in the mayor's race in New York. You know, coming out with these crazy ideas. What crazy ideas does he have, like with communism? Oh, they're not going to be any more grocery stores because we're going to take them over. We're going to hand out free food. Where are you going to pay for it? Well, we're going to steal it all from the rich, going to tax them to death. But free food. We're going to give free housing, free transportation, all communistic, socialistic principles. Well, why didn't people say, are you out of your mind? We don't even put you on the ballot, much less, allow you to campaign. No, because they were scared to say anything negative about his proposals, because what would they be called? You're saying this, you're being negative towards my proposals because I'm Islamic. You obviously are, Islamophobic, and you are just, a discriminatory person. That scum of the earth. You shouldn't even be allowed to be in this country. And we allowed it to get to that point, and they know that now. So why do you see so many of them? Why do you think you have Omar in Congress? Why hasn't Omar, who's broken countless laws, immigration laws, how she's even in this country, forget a member of Congress, is beyond me. Why is nobody willing to say that?
Because they're running cover. Because the Democrats are running cover. And bottom line is not what bothers the crap out of me. It sounds like that her actual family heritage, she comes here and talks about how terrible the United States is for us having blacks who were slaves generations ago, like over 100 years ago, like approaching it's over 150 years ago. She talks about that, but within her own family, they were slavers.
Yes.
And there's questions on whether they still are slavers.
Slavery didn't start in the United States, folks. It started in Africa. I mean, one tribe would take over another. And they wouldn't say, "Oh, now that we've taken you over, let's all live in harmony and let's expand. We'll work the fields together." No, I took you over. Now the people that I took over, you're my slaves. You do everything I tell you to do, you die. That concept's been with them for long before America ever was even discovered as a continent. And yet somehow they've used that to make Americans feel like we can't challenge their ideology because we're challenging their religion. I tell people this all the time. I'm not challenging their religion. They're free to believe anything they want to. However, you're not free to believe that if I don't believe what you believe, I should be put to death. That crosses the line. And if you can't renounce that, you have no business being a member of this country. You need to be sent back to a country that believes. That's so y'all could all live in peace and harmony there instead of trying to kill us over here because we're not going to comply with what your belief system is. That's the way it should be.
And I'm going to say the first law that should be passed by Congress the next time they reconvene, if they're not already reconvened right now, the first thing that they should pass is the American Citizens Only Act for Congress. If you must renounce all citizenship of any other
Correct.
country, you must denounce, you must send, and if you are a dual citizen, you must show proof that you are renouncing your citizenship to the other country besides the United States. Bottom line, there's only one country you should be a citizen of if
That's
you're in
right.
Congress, and that's the United States.
I think that's only fair, and I think most Americans would agree with that. I mean, if you're
I
going
think
to
most
control the
Americans
country,
I think most Americans would be shocked how
I
many
would agree.
members of Congress are dual citizens.
Yeah. Or 80, what is it, 85? I told you, current members
I
of
want to say
Congress, 85.
I want to say it was over 50, and I want to say 85 sounds right.
Yeah, I think it's 85 that are current have dual citizenship that represent us supposedly in Congress, yet their allegiance to another country. And it is just the point being that we're having this discussion. I'm so glad we're having it, John. Is look, there are a lot of things that we still need to put to the forefront to discuss that we need to become aware of and get corrected. We do not need to bow and be intimidated by those who are using other methods, such as Islamic or Muslim beliefs, etc., to be able to get away with pushing and propagating their ideology without it being challenged to where it ultimately affects us. You got to look at what their goal is. Don't challenge what I'm saying because you're an Islamic, you're a phobic or whatever it is. Yeah, along you're a bad person. So just look at my smile, and that should be enough to get me elected. Now, once I'm in a position of election, then I begin to use that to change the law, to direct towards Sharia law, to make comments that we don't appreciate your values, John. We don't appreciate your opinion. You're not welcome here anymore. I'm telling you that in the United States of America, where this country was founded on faith and Christian values, and now they're telling us we're not welcome here in our country? Folks, it is time we wake up and we begin to see the consequences of this kind of mindset and mentality and resist it now. Because if you don't resist it now, it'll be the same as what happened in Germany. I didn't say anything because it didn't affect me. You took my neighbor, you didn't affect me. I didn't say anything because you took my cousin across the street. Then one day you came to take me, and I looked out to see who was going to defend to help me, and there was no one left.
Well, on top of that, we'll have an October 7th right here in the United States, and it'll be a lot bigger and a lot worse.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's several topics that I want to get to on Chicago, Portland, Illinois, the Guard. So I'm going to start with this. I just heard a report that ICE attacks on ICE are up over 1,000%.
That is correct.
And actually, before we hit this one, I want your comments on this. The Des Moines School Board appointed an illegal alien superintendent, Dr. Ian Andre Roberts, in Iowa. It's an Iowa public school, and he's a fugitive from Ghana.
Correct.
He had an illegal firearm. They didn't
Correct.
care. And when they came to take him away, the federal government came to take him away you had a bunch of people show up, and over 100 people show up, and like, how can you do this? My question is to the school board, who happens to be all female. How in the world do you allow an illegal alien? Well, okay, I can see that, but a fugitive from Ghana who has, I believe it's several children within 1 year by multiple different women. I'm like,
Oh,
this dude is not a great guy.
let's carry it a step further. He came over on a visa that expired, that he never renewed. Now, if you're hiring somebody, I would think you do a background check. He has convictions, not just warrants, convictions on domestic violence, robbery, burglary, etc. He's a felon, okay, first and foremost. So my
Here in the
question to
United
you is,
States, here in the
in the
United
United
States,
in the United States, in the United States. So my first question to you is, why would you hire a felon to supervise not just a classroom? He was a superintendent. That means he had all these schools underneath him, all these principals, all these teachers. He's the head honcho. Why would you hire somebody with that? Second of all, his credentials, they were all fake. They were photocopied. He didn't have any college degree or anything along with that. You gonna tell me you hired him without doing a background check, or at least saying, calling the university he claimed to have a doctorate degree from and saying, hey, what kind of student was he? I don't know what you're talking about. We didn't have a student like that. You didn't do any of that. What did you do? And here's where it goes to the next question, John. If you allow this to happen with the superintendent who has the jurisdiction over all these teachers and principals, what are you doing in the classroom?
he
Do
was a
you
bit
know
of a
who's
flirt.
teaching your kids?
Oh, you're allowing that to go on. You're
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
absolutely.
Do you know who's teaching your kids? Do you know who your principal is? Oh, now you're meddling. No, I'm asking a simple question. If you can hire a superintendent without looking at his criminal background, without making sure that his credentials, were valid, without looking at his, and he was a Muslim, by the way, without looking at all these particular obvious, very obvious, anybody could see him background, and you hired him anyway, I think I have cause to ask. If you're doing that there, then what are you doing in my classroom where my kids are learning? Who are you allowing to teach them? What you're going to find out, and this is why this is we've opened a can of worms bigger than most people realize, John. But the teachers unions are so powerful, and this is how we got this country into a mess. We've talked about it in the book that I did, Truth, Lies, and Total Control. We have allowed them to take over our educational structure in this country, and we don't pay any attention. They teach our kids how bad America is. They teach our kids that Muslims should be, their faith should be the only one, and those that don't believe it should die. They teach our kids that, quite frankly, we need capitalism is a horrible idea and it should be done away with. We're allowing them to do that. Shame on us, John. Shame on fathers. Shame on parents that you would allow that to happen, and for them to basically kidnap the minds of your kids, and you didn't even have enough backbone to stand up to it for the sake of your children. What kind of country do we live in, John?
Okay, so one of the questions that I have in general, and I'll pose it here: shouldn't we just let these, those of us, you live in South Carolina, in
I
general,
do.
a good conservative area. Here in Utah,
Correct.
yeah, it's not as conservative as they say it is, but it's still pretty conservative. Um, shouldn't we just let Illinois, in this Iowa school district, suffer their own consequences? And why should we care? Is it any place of us to say anything about it? My answer to that question is yes. And here's the reason why. A, they're receiving federal funds. B, once you get into the United States, you can travel anywhere pretty easily. You can
And
help.
that's the key, John. Is we're not talking about. See, we could take a different angle to this question. If every state had a 75-foot fence all the way around it, of the armed guards at crossings, and you couldn't get in and out, and that way we could contain the people, the criminals you want to keep contained in your state and not affect anybody else. That's not America. We have freedom of enterprise, freedom of transportation. I can go to your state and see you this afternoon if I want to, John. Nobody can keep you from doing that. You can come here for a day, a week, a month. I can't keep you out. So the point being is that that whole ideology about, well, let's just let them suffer their consequences as long as it doesn't affect us. It does affect you because this is the way our country was founded and is structured. As long as it's been founded and structured that way, we have to fight to keep our freedom for the entire nation because you can't segregate it, block it off in certain sections of the country. It just doesn't work.
Right. Okay, so I want to get to these cities and the craziness that's happened in some of these cities. First, I want to hit your thoughts on the ICE blocking the judge or a judge blocking ICE in Portland, and it's more specifically blocking the use of the National Guard.
Why am I laughing? I'm glad you brought that up. Let me tell you what has transpired, and Governor Newsom is fit to be tied. We just deployed 300 California Guards people to Portland.
Oh wow!
We have found a way around that. We are deploying Texas National Guard to Illinois, and I mean I could go through the list. There's a lot more to come. You say, how can you do that? I'm not willing to reveal those secrets right now on the air. But I'll tell you, we have found a way around it. Now, you say, well, I'm going to stop it. Okay. We had that discussion today. You want to stop it. Let me tell you what you're doing. Nobody debates this, even the courts. There was a few decades back called the Insurrection Act, if you will recall, that if the president feels that there is an insurgency occurring, he can mobilize any unit, guard, active, troops, whatever is necessary to quell that action. Now, when you are attacking the federal government, you're talking about ICE, you're talking about federal law, and you are actually endangering the citizens in doing that. You're burning, looting, etc. The president has the right. There is no specific definition of insurgency. Okay, it's broad categorization, and was done so for a reason. What was the reason? Let's talk about the history real quick. John, if you're going to start creating an insurrection, I don't have time to sit there and analyze, did he say the right thing? Is it really insurgency? Is it not? If you're leading marches in the street, if you're killing people, you're looting things, I've got to react and react now. Okay. I can't spend a month with a judge trying to figure out, is he doing the right thing? Does it qualify under insurgency? Does it not? We move immediately to quell it. That's why those powers are granted. The president, as of today, is considering enacting or utilizing the Insurgency Act that's already been passed decades ago. And if he does that, activist judges, your opinion doesn't matter anymore. He's operating under the law, and he can do whatever is necessary to bring law and reestablish law and order to areas where there are riots or where there appear to be attempted overthrow of the government.
So let's also hit in Chicago, the chief police called off. And I believe it came from the chief. You said chief of the watch, but I want to say it came from the chief of police and also from the mayor. We are not going to support the federal government, going to support ICE.
Right.
In fact, Chicago is creating ICE-free zones within their city, supposedly. I'd like to see how that is going to hold up in the courts. But the bottom, and then you had a lady, and you were talking about this earlier, in a vehicle that tried to run into a bunch of ICE agents, pulled a semi-automatic firearm, and was shot for her troubles. They took, when they saw that the firearm was pulled on them, they offensively fired on her, and she fortunately, I'm going to say fortunately, she was able to drive herself to a hospital to be treated, where she was, I'm going to say very fortunately, arrested.
Correct. Yeah, she survived that one. They must not have been looking as hard as they should have been, because most time when you have 30 agents firing upon you, they don't miss. But that having been said, what is the purpose of the discussion that we're having here now? we are determined to not allow activist judges, those who have nefarious intent, to circumvent the protection of the American people. We said it again today. Very clear. The president was very clear. We will take whatever actions necessary, including, since we're getting blocked so many times, if we have to declare the Insurgency Act to be enforced, he's prepared to do so. So I'd be very careful about my message to all those listening. To Governor Newsom, I know he loves your show, I'm sure. And to the activist judges and the Governor Pritzker and all that are probably listening right now, I'd be very, very careful what my next move is, because you're fixing to get rained down upon you something you've never seen before. When you abuse your authority and you harm the citizens that you're sworn to uphold and protect, and we have to bring in federal forces to do that, it's not going to go well for you.
I wonder if there's any laws along the lines of dereliction of duty.
There are plenty of, not just dereliction of duty, obstruction of justice. I mean, and you talked about the Chicago issue. Yes, you are right. That directive came from the governor's office. No, he wasn't stupid enough to send it as an executive order. But there was discussion. His verbiage was, we're not going to do anything to support. He encouraged those within his state to do the same thing. The mayor relayed that to the chief of police. All those were too chicken to actually put it in writing and issue the order. So that's why the deputy chief of police, or the second in command, actually was the one to release the radio call, stand down, because they were already en route. Stand down. We're not going to protect.
Well, it was interesting. So here, kind of what had happened is the call goes into 911. You hear the 911 operator saying, saying, "Hey, all units respond to wherever the location was,"
which they did. They were doing.
And they, you have units that say respond that we're en route, and then all of a sudden you have someone come in, and I want to say it was like a 999 or something like that. But am I right on that number?
You're right on the number, and it was the what's the exact title we give him? Chief or deputy chief of the patrol.
Of the patrol, okay. And so he got on and basically said, "We are not responding to this. We are not helping them out." And you hear officers like, "What?" And then you hear
exactly.
And then you hear some other officers like, "We're caught up in this mess now. We can't get away." And the officer of the watch was like, "Get out of there as soon as you can."
Yeah. And leave the area. We are not participating. He said it twice. And here's giving you the structure of command in law enforcement. You have a chief who oversees the entire agency. And then he assigns deputy chiefs to various units, patrol unit. That's all those who are in uniform with the marked vehicles, lights on top, et cetera, et cetera. You have one chief in charge of detectives. You have special units, prostitution units, things along those lines. Each has its own chief. But this was the chief of the patrol, because it was the patrol officers who take the calls. When obviously, if you're a detective, you're in the car, and if you want to do the right thing, you're going to respond anyway. Anybody's got a badge, whether you're on patrol, not on patrol, whether you're off duty, you hear the call, you're rushing to try to help save lives with your brothers and sisters.
Those that didn't see at the very beginning, what was the call? Officer in distress, right?
Officer in distress.
And that came from ICE agents. And what was going on at that time?
They had called. The reason they put it is, what had happened. They were in a caravan, 30 of them. They had about 4 SUVs transporting the 30 officers. Out of nowhere, you see 20 cars come rushing out of side streets, going in front of them, slam on the brakes, stopping. So they boxed them in. So they couldn't. There was no way you could take a left, take a right, back up. They were boxed in. Then right after they were boxed in, a lady in her SUV takes an opening. They pull one of the cars back, opens an opening to the side of an SUV, and she just guns it and plows into the side of the SUV, trying to injure the officers there. Once she's done that, and of course she can tell they're shook up, but they're still alive, she exits and pulls out her weapon and starts firing. They then get on the phone. Now that they're under fire, they get on the radio. Officer in distress. Shots fired. Shots fired. Officer in distress. We're under attack. All you had to say. Okay. Boom. Every unit that heard that, whether a call had gone through the dispatch system or not, once that went out over the radio, any cop who's had any experience and any decency immediately responds to the call to see if we can save our brothers from being killed. And that's what happened. And then suddenly, as they're jumping in the cars, they're hitting their mics. This is 1027 responding. Giving his call, their call sign. Suddenly, somebody comes on. Oh, no. We're not responding. We're not going to. And gave us identification code. His call sign 999, which means he was second in command. Nope, we're not responding to any calls for ICE or federal agents. Said it twice. Now he's trying to backpedal, and he's doing a lousy job of doing it. He's saying it was misunderstood because of the excitement of the moment. He was trying to say, respond to make sure that they're safe, to help free them, to secure their safety, but don't get involved with them arresting illegals or their mission statement. You're not federal officers, you're local. He didn't say any of that. He was just very clear. No, we're standing down. And if you really meant that clarification, you would have clarified on the air. You would have said, yes, get over there and make sure they're safe. Oh, by the way, once they're safe, we're not putting cops in. No other actions needed. You just make sure they're safe. He could have very easily done that. He didn't do that. But he's saying now it was a little misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, John.
Okay, so I want to know, can that individual be arrested that gave the stand down order? Can he be arrested federally? And can it be moved out of Illinois to, say, like Missouri?
Very great questions, and we're researching the answer to that now. My impression is yes. It would be obstruction of justice. It would be, aiding and abetting the enemy, all federal statutes, and he's guilty of every one of them.
Because if we could get that into like Missouri, and especially into like the center of Missouri, he's in a lot of trouble if he goes up for trial.
I gotta tell you this, John.
Because
if we keep it in Chicago,
if he's tried in Chicago, I mean, nothing's going to happen.
Well, I would have agreed with you last week. This week, I think Chicagoans are so put out that nobody cares about their safety. Nobody cares whether they're being threatened or not. I believe they're turning on their elected officials very quickly. They tell me that the approval rating of Johnson's in the single digit now,
and
like 7%.
And Johnson,
the
mayor. That's right.
The mayor.
And I've heard that same thing. And if your approval numbers are in the single digits, you're in trouble.
Yeah, your entire administration is in trouble. And that's why I say I believe even if they try it in Chicago, I believe that person's going to be in deep trouble for doing that.
Well, let's hope so. So I would love to start seeing some of these people tried within their own, within the own jurisdictions where these are happening, and actually be held accountable and actually receive jail time.
I agree. It's not just that I agree that I would love to see it as well. John, it has to happen. America will not survive if it doesn't. Because I'm telling you, I'm all across this country handing out vests with all kind of things that we're doing. And what I see all the time now is I can't go anywhere without people approaching me. And the first thing they do, you give you a handshake, a hug, love what you're saying, but then they'll pat me on the back and say, but you and I both know ain't nothing going to happen to them. That seems to be coming to the mindset. And if a country loses its faith in its justice system, we're done.
That's true. That's when anarchy goes full blown.
Correct. And we're so darn close to being there, John.
And so my statement I'm going to go back to again that I kind of started this show off with. Those of us that consider ourselves, that call ourselves conservatives, especially of those of us that would say we're Christian conservatives. As I like to say, I'm Christian first, conservative second. Now, frankly, if you're a good Christian, I don't know how you can be anything but conservative.
But conservative, I agree.
But the bottom line is, so to me, it's somewhat synonymous. But I try to put in the qualifier. I'm a Christian conservative. We need to be careful. We need to not ratchet things up, because if we don't, we are going to see the nation will unravel. Let those that are willing to, we may have to be smacked on the cheek a few times.
Correct.
But if we need to do that, we can't return kind for kind, or else we won't receive God's grace. Last thing I want to ask you is, what do we know about the church arson and shooting up in Michigan? What do we know there? What can you tell us that is not necessarily known by everyone? But the narrative is that this was a Trump supporter, a guy that voted for Donald Trump, I believe in 2020 and I believe 2024. But there's a picture of him in 2020 wearing a Trump shirt, and laced his car, went and shot people. I was told, and I hate to do this, but I do want to get a little bit into the details. My understanding is, after he broke into uh, broke his way in, he went in the congregation and started walking up on people and saying, "Do you believe in Jesus Christ, or do you believe in Joseph Smith?" And if you didn't answer Jesus Christ quick enough, he shot him. Have you heard that? If that, you could verify whether that's true or not.
I have heard that, but we can't find any validation that it's true.
Okay. So what do we know what happened? And also, he lit that building on fire. It is most of the church buildings that are built by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, most of those buildings, the walls are cinder block.
Correct.
So to get the burning of the wood, you would have to lace it pretty heavily with gasoline. So my question is, what do you know about what happened?
There were incendiary devices that were used, not the IEDs, but incendiary devices. He used Molotov cocktails to spread that, and it wasn't just gas. It was very incendiary type material that much more potent than gas to cause a fire to ignite just like that. I really think what happened was that he wanted to light the fire first, then he was going to get out and expected the fire to produce the heat necessary to set off the IEDs, and boom, the entire congregation or a good portion of it would have been blown up. But and of course, and himself included, he was willing to do that, but it didn't catch. It didn't catch on the truck.
Okay. Do you believe this was a quote unquote Christian that did this?
No.
Why?
Quite frankly, first of all, to have that kind of, remember, we're not talking about I'm just mad at you, John, and I shoot you out of anger. We're talking about premeditated. We're talking about I'm trying to kill hundreds. When you have that kind of warped personality, you're demonic, but you're not a Christian. Now, what does the opposition want to portray in the image and what they want you to believe? Two things. First of all, they want to try to divide the conservative basis. Well, there's a difference between a Mormon and a Christian, so let's pit the two of them against each other. And then second of all, let's go ahead and pit and fire up our liberal base. Look at what these crazy conservatives are doing. They're trying to kill hundreds. If you say the liberals did it, well, at least we only shoot one or two as an active shooter. And these people are trying to blow up a whole church full of people. And of course, remember I told you what happened Sunday. They're still after that objective, John. It's heavy on their minds.
There's a reason why so many churches are being gone after now. I recently saw someone on the other side had a meme where there was a boot held up to a kid's head and said Christian or being held down by a boot, and then a further picture out and you see that the kid's just holding the boot. No, Christians actually right now are being gone after.
No question.
And so now, did he have any other religious affiliations that you know of?
Yes, he was heavily involved with Middle Eastern Islamic, Muslim teachings.
Okay. So
Heavily influenced there.
So there is question on that. He may have been heading down the path to not be Christian anymore.
Well, what it's obvious to us is this, on the inside on the investigation. He had no Christian values or any way to even claim Christianity. He was heavily influenced by hate groups, by the transgenders, and by the Muslims, okay, and by Islamic jihadists, and they packaged it that way to do just what we talked about, to take the view off of them and put it on making it divisive just among conservatives, among Christians, Mormons, etc. That type of situation. And quite frankly, they're getting smart. What better way to bring about destruction than to cause the people who are trying to defend values and freedom to begin to fight among themselves?
Well, I think that's a good final statement.
It is.
And
a lot more to come, but this has been a great show. Thank you for the opportunity, John.
Well, folks, I want to say thank you to Michael Letts. Michael Letts with Invest USA. Michael, appreciate you being here on KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. You can, folks, this well worth sharing with your family and friends. Go to kmmu.org and you can click on our Twitter link, or on our X link, rather, our YouTube link and Rebel link, and you can share it. So I want to say, once again, Michael Letts of Invest USA. Folks, support him. Support his organization. He's given out over 17,000 active shooter vests. Let's see what we can do to help them, help his organization get more active shooter vests out to others. Let's keep these people safe, because the bottom line is, I do think that in many areas, the police are being supported much more. They need to know that we're on their side, and that's one way that we can do it. Contribute 5, 10, 15, 20 bucks. If you can afford supporting a whole active shooter vest, please do.
Very little is all it takes to show them that we've got their backs. They've been covering our backs for years, John. They're tired. They're worn out. They need to know that we support them. God bless you again, John. God bless America. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much, folks. This has been Talk with John, and we want to say thank you for joining us, and good night.